Coucou la communauté des French learners. Hello, I'm speaking in English today because it is the motivation break. And I'm really happy to have a special guest, a special member of our community. She's going to talk about a journey, a French journey. The motivation break is really to boost you, to motivate you to start acquiring French or to continue acquiring French, because it is a long process, a long journey. It takes time to acquire language. And I hope those interviews with real people, with real experiences will motivate you.
amisayel.com pour acquérir le français naturellement.
So today I'm really happy to have Diane. And in French we say Diane.
Yes.
What do you prefer?
Well, since we're in the French world, we'll say Diane.
Diane. Okay. Do you know why your parents called you Diane? Was it because of a French connection or not at all?
I'm not really sure. I know I have an aunt that her middle name was Diane, and so maybe that's why. A family story, something like that.
So, Diane, you're a very special member of our community on my site, amisayel.com. You are every Saturday, you are, we say in French, animating, participating and really being une animatrice of the French community. There are lives sessions, online sessions, and you are there to you welcome new members and you help. I'm not there, but you are there really helping people with the challenge. Yes. The challenge hour, right?
Yes. The challenge hour. It's an idea that I came up with. It's not to challenge each other, but to challenge ourselves, and it gives us an opportunity to test our knowledge of the language in a very friendly environment. And we encourage people to read a story, a special story, and be prepared to read it on the site with us out loud. So everyone gets a little paragraph to read. And in advance, I prepare some questions, very simple questions. I ask them in French, and I also say it in English, because we want everybody to be able to work together to acquire the language. And so far, it seems to be working out very well. It's an enjoyable experience. People become friendly, and especially during this time when most of us are somewhat isolated, it's an amazing thing that we can actually reach across the globe and develop new friendships. So it's a very special of you to permit us to do this, because it shows a great trust in your community. And it's just so wonderful. I can't explain it, to have this opportunity. So I thank you.
Well, I thank you. I thank you for giving your time every Saturday. And from the feedback I got also on the community chat, we have a chat where members can type in their experiences or their questions. From the feedback I got, it's amazing. It's people are really enjoying, and I think it's a great idea to read aloud. Reading aloud is the first step, I think, to then be able to speak, to take part in conversations.
Exactly. And the stories that we use are the stories from your website. And they're very good stories. In fact, after I read them for my study, because every day I read a new story, I study the story, I read it out loud, I read it silently, and then I walk around the room trying to pretend that I'm engaged in a conversation with the writer of the story. And then when it comes dinner time, I tell the story to my family because they're very special stories that you've selected. They have a great cultural content. They usually have a nice moral to them. And I've learned so much just in this past year. It's almost like taking a master's course in literature. It's really astounding, especially the old folk tales. And to be able to read them in French is just wonderful. You know, for me, it has been a very long journey, a very long, arduous journey. And it actually started when I was a child at 3 years of age. And I'll have to say, Alice, those were the years when I first started acquiring French the way you speak of learning a language. Because when I was 3 years old, I went to ballet school and we learned the words plié, arabesque, acheté, échappé. And these words were so strange and beautiful to me, the sounding of these words. And I remember them from age 3. And then I had an uncle that would travel to France and he would come back and tell us stories. And very slowly, I developed an interest in the French world, the culture of France. So my ballet lessons continued through the years. And then I had a very nice opportunity. Oh, another thing that was very helpful, because I'm older now, in the 1950s, there were a lot of movies, musicals that dealt with France, like Gigi and South Pacific. They had that song, Dites-moi pourquoi, la vie est belle. And I remember that. And then my mother would sing these songs, Frère Jacques and Sur le Pont d'Avignon, because she studied French in school. She studied with the nuns. And that also gave me a push to want to learn more about France and the culture. So, but unfortunately, what happened was as I went through the school system here, they based the studies on the classical tradition, teaching the grammar. I did have one teacher at my very first year of studying French, and she was a native French speaker. She actually, well, in those days, that was the years of Camelot when Kennedy was in office, and she went to his inauguration, and she would tell us all about it and the beautiful clothing that she sewed her own dresses because, French couture, that was the greatest thing. And she was able to give us a little bit of the pronunciation and of course to continue the motivation, but she had to stick to the books. And so it was grammar. And then through the rest of my high school years, it was the same thing, grammar. And as much as I might be good at the grammar, I kind of lost the ability to feel confident with speaking. I couldn't do the speaking. I continued my ballet lessons and I studied with Iva Kitchell, who was a very special mime artist, world famous during her era, which was the 30s and the 40s. And she had retired and moved to Long Island and gave lessons. Her husband, Stokely Webster, was a French painter, an impressionist painter. And in the dance studio, there were paintings of France all around the bar. So when I did my warm-ups, I could look at scenes of Paris. And I said to my father, I says, Dad, Mom, you and Mom had 8 children, and I'm the oldest. I would love to go to France. Can you help me out? Think of the babysitting money I could have made all these years watching the kids for you. So my parents found a way that I could go to France, and I went to Paris. And part of it was to study French and the culture. And I stayed at La Maison. It was with the nuns. And my father said, that's the only way you could go if you stay with the nuns. So I stayed for a month with them. And I learned a little bit of French, but not much. They weren't there to teach. So I went to the Alliance Française. And again, it was grammar. It was these textbooks. It was very difficult to acquire the French. And I was so disappointed. And then the other disappointment, it didn't work out with the ballet lessons. It was so hard. I studied with a little ballet school on Rue de Bec with, I think it was Madame Tikhonova or something like that, because my teacher in America had a connection there. And although they accepted me into the program, it really wasn't for me. At the same time, I did love painting and all the other arts, and I diverted over to those. And then something very wonderful happened. I did meet my husband there in Paris. He was a student from Copenhagen. He was going to University of Copenhagen studying philosophy. And what happened was the nuns didn't tell us that they were closing the La Maison for the month of August, and the nuns would go on vacation. So I had to find another place to live. So I went to the Auberge de Jeunesse in Paris, and that's where I met my husband. So we knew each other for 2 weeks, and he knew much more French than I did. And that's how we got along in France. And I promised my father I would come home. So I went home, and then we wrote to each other for 2 years, and he got married, and I lived in Copenhagen for a while. But when I came back to the States, I went back to university and took French again. And once again, it was the classical technique of the grammar all the time. And I was very disappointed. I kept trying to study and trying to learn, and I wanted to speak it. I'd try to meet French people so maybe they could help me. It was very, very difficult. So eventually, what happened, many years go by, and throughout those many years, I would pick up my same school books, sit down and try to learn, and it just wasn't happening. To speak, I should say, to speak. But when a few years before our 50th anniversary, my husband and I decided that we would go back to Paris to celebrate. So I really, really gave it all everything to try to be able to speak on our trip. And it didn't work out. I could say a few things, but not much at all. But we had a very nice time regardless. And when I came home, that was the low point in my studies of French. And I said, maybe I just don't have that talent. Maybe I just can't do it. And I said, but I love the French culture, the food, everything. You know, it was something special. It's my whole part of my life. So I says, I'll pursue the cooking. So I went on the internet, and that's how I found you, through the kitchen door, because you had a website. It was the French, le potage de légumes and la clafoutis.
Oui, le clafoutis.
Clafoutis. So I was watching them, and I watched them, and I says, oh, I wonder if she has anything else. And then I discovered all your little lessons that you gave with Medor and very simple lessons. So I did everything off the YouTube at first. And after a couple of months, I says, oh, I'm going to go on that web. I'm going to find her site and join it. And that's what I did. I joined your site. And then every day I did a lesson. I studied it very hard. And before you know it, I was starting to speak French. I couldn't believe it. It was amazing that I was actually, I'd sit there, you know, after the lesson, I would be speaking, and at night when I'm trying to go to sleep at night, I was just saying conversation. It's like, nous pouvons parler en français maintenant, si vous voulez, parce que je peux parler. It's like a gift from heaven, you know, and that was through you. So I have been doing this now for over a year. And when I felt very confident, I went to your podcast. That was another high point, because on those podcasts, I listened to the people, they were amazing. It was Alma Gonzalez and Elsa Serrano and Fabio, all these people that had pretty much the same story, that they were in the grips of the grammar, study the grammar, and this will how you're going to learn French. Well, okay, maybe you can read French, but French is more than reading. It's an exchange between people, and the language has a beautiful sound. I think it's one of the most beautiful sounds. It's so musical. It's like listening to beautiful birds outside. It's just lovely. And more attention should be given in the schools to speaking the language, because that's how the language developed, through personal contact, back and forth. So when I learned that they also were instructed in the grammar and they couldn't speak right away, that it took them a long time until they found Stephen Crenshaw, I think that's his name.
Stephen Krashen, yeah.
Krashen, and your website, and they started to develop this way of speaking. Of course, some of them did have an opportunity to stay longer in France, like to be in a speaking country, but that's how they could acquire the language. And for those of us that can't be in this French-speaking country, through your type of program, you can acquire it by doing what you have to do. Now, you really have to be every day set aside some time, and it's almost like when people say it's good to meditate, and they set aside time to meditate, or they set aside time to say prayers or whatever, to do something that's for inner self. Well, you could do that with the language. Set a time for learning the language, because it's a good thing to do. It's good for yourself, and it's good for the world, because the more languages that you speak, the more you can communicate with people and discover that you have a lot more in common than you have differences. So I would recommend that people set aside time, that they follow the program from the beginning all the way through. Try not to skip around too much, because you have it set up so that it goes by levels. And I noticed as I'm going through them that some of the stories repeat, but in a more advanced way, so that you're building on what you've learned, and you're getting more acquainted with the vocabulary. And another thing that was very interesting for me to learn, that the language is acquired through just it goes into you mentally. Like, you can't believe it at first. That's the hardest thing for somebody who's been trained with grammar. They just can't believe that listening is going to somehow magically do it for them. But it is a large part of it. It's a very, very large part of it. And the other thing is that you should not be afraid to make mistakes. Now, I'm still a little bit afraid to make a mistake, because that's how I was raised, the way the schools were in every subject. But if you don't think of competition, don't get worried about things, just say it's a wonderful thing to do, it's pleasant. And children learn this way. It's like we all have an inner child, they say. So what you're doing is you're reaching that inner child, and the inner child is hungry for knowledge. It's hungry to learn. And once you start, it wants more. And sometimes you even have to say, wait a minute, slow down a little bit, because there is a temptation to want to start memorizing a lot of vocabulary to start, because you say, oh, if I know all these words, oh, I can speak so much. But then you overdo it. So you just take it slow. A good practice is the words that you might need for daily basis. You have those, like in some of your little videos where you show in the morning you know, when you wake up in the morning and you're getting dressed and you're going to have breakfast, little things like that, you know, make you confident that you could handle it. Say if you suddenly came into contact with a French person, you could say, oh, voulez-vous du café ou du thé? You know, let's see, j'ai un petit gâteau ici, c'est très délicieux. You could offer them things because you have the basic, you know, asseyez-vous, or, you know, simple things like that. And then you feel more, and then it will build. And the person that you're speaking with, if they speak a little too fast, you could say them, oh, un peu lentement, s'il vous plaît, you know, and then they will slow down for you. And then that will help you to gain confidence. So it's an amazing journey, and it's a wonderful journey. And I just feel so privileged to be part of the group. I think that, and I also have to say that so much of it is due to your personality, because you have a way of letting people be beginners. You let them, you say it's okay to start slow. We're going to, and it's fine. It's not like some teachers, they come in the classroom and right away they expect you, you know, to succeed, to have homework and, you know, do everything perfect right away. You know, you take take time with us. And that made me feel very confident, you know, that you have this type of gentle approach, I would say, which is very, very rare. It's a gift. It's like being an artist and being able to paint a picture, like a very nice watercolor painting. So, you know, that's how I feel. There was a friend, he wasn't French, but he loved France, an 18th century lexiconographer, they call him, Dr. Samuel Johnson. Mm-hmm. And he wrote the first English dictionary. And he said that it's important for people to read whatever they can read, whatever they feel interested in reading. It's very good for them. And when I was in France, I read, I love reading, and I have a background as a journalist. I've written for magazines about art and art criticism. I'm a painter also. I've had some art shows. And the reading is very, very special. So even though I am acquainted with Rimbaud and Victor Hugo and Balzac and, you know, Guy de Maupassant, all these writers from France, a little magazine like Nudu was very interesting to me because it showed conversations in little bubbles, almost like a comic book. And it interests me because it was showing people in a day-to-day situation and giving a little simple dialogue. And I said, gee, I usually don't buy magazines like this type, you know, but I think I'll buy it. And I really enjoyed that, you know. I thought of Samuel Johnson. He said, well, any little thing that will help you. Now, this is before I knew of you and what you do. And then it dawned on me when you were teaching and you drew the pictures. At first, I didn't understand why you were drawing pictures. And I thought, well, maybe she's illustrating. She's just trying to illustrate what she's talking about. But then I knew what it was. It was to get deeper, to make the words be attached to a visual image so that would stay with you. So then that's what I started doing. When I would have find challenging words or a phrase that was kind of challenging, I would draw a picture just like you did. And it started to make sense right away. Like for certain things, I would make up like a comic book story. of somebody going to get married, like a man, he wants to propose to the girl, and let's see, he eventually he let you see invité
Oui.
to go to the church, the invitations, and I had little pictures of what this couple were doing, and it really helped me so much. That was another thing that I found from studying with you. I had never seen anything like that before, so it might have been that when I saw that little comic book, the Nudu comic, because we don't have that in this country. They don't do stories like that in a magazine. I've never seen it with a photograph of real people.
Yeah, we call that roman photo.
Oh, roman photo.
A roman photo, like a novel with photographs, yeah. Right. And when I was a teenager, I loved those types of magazines.
Yeah, so I had never seen that here, but I think that's what struck me, that was trying to say to me, the language, the word with the picture, and that's why I gravitated towards it. So then when I understood what you were trying to do with drawing the pictures with the words, it's a very important technique, and I encourage people, when I draw those pictures, I don't draw like a fine artist. I just draw whatever my hand is going to do. It's not important how it ultimately looks. It's a person, it's going to the chapel to get married. It's a table with a wedding cake on it, invité to the gâteau, different things like that. And so it's helped me tremendously. So.
Oh, so you make up stories?
Yes.
You make up stories?
Yes.
Now, and you draw them and label them.
And I draw them, yes. I wonder if I have a picture.
This is a very good tip too for those who are watching us.
Yeah.
If you want to output, I think writing is also important. It's also another form of output, writing,
yes, yes.
And it can help with speaking. Yes. Because when you write for yourself, so you're less stressed out.
Yes.
Than when you talk. Usually you have people in front of you, and that makes you feel tense.
Yes.
So
that's
writing.
Why it's good. That's why it's good that you have those breathing exercises before we start, the relaxation. Inspire, expire.
Yes.
It's very good. And I throw in a little bit of my ability to say things in French to encourage the students that are going to listen, that it's true. Because even if you, I know you have the recordings of the little Saturday, every once in a while on a Saturday, we'd get together with you.
Yes.
And you do a recording. And I was so nervous, I could hardly get the words out. I would stammer, and I had to close my eyes. I couldn't do it with my eyes open, and I didn't like that. I felt that's ridiculous. And so now it's totally different, so it's really amazing. So
wow, what an amazing journey.
Yes.
Diane, I didn't know it. You started at 3 years old already. I mean, with dancing, and I didn't know you were so determined. I mean, you were so persistent and determined to, like when you said you had your books, your old books, and you would make yourself study because you so wanted to acquire French. This is amazing.
Yes,
I'm so touched.
And it's very. You get upset a little bit because you feel like you've been cheated of something. But you have, because the way they just teach the grammar, and they're still doing it. They do try to have some audio, listen to some. Now maybe they have CDs that they have the children listen to. They try, but for the most part, it's still the grammar, and it's such a pity because people go to learn French, not to learn grammar. They go there to learn to speak it. That's why I signed up, you know.
Yes.
And it's just amazing. So it took these linguists and people that study language to, I guess, eventually understand that there is a big disconnect. And then they develop the programs like what you're doing, you know, bring it to the public. But I have to say that if it wasn't for the cooking, I wouldn't know about you.
Yes.
So I wouldn't know. So it's from the, you know, through the kitchen door into the stomach, and you know, and that's, you know, if you ever get a chance to do some more. I saw the one with the prunes. I did that one too. You had made a prune cake, which reminded me of something my mother made years ago. She would make a similar dessert with the prunes like that. So it's just
Yeah, I'm thinking of doing some more cooking videos, but for now we are really focused on finishing the infant stage, which is the stage after the baby stage on the membership, and then afterwards we will see. I have so many ideas, you know, but as you know, time is always the big thing. Like you said, you dedicate, how long do you dedicate each day to French then? And and when can you explain to those who are watching us? I think people, they need like concrete examples, you know, to start. Like, at what time do you start?
All right. Well, what happens, I have a, like, maybe a little bit unusual type of routine. When my husband prefers to eat his breakfast alone because he looks at the computer and he doesn't want to be distracted. So, okay, that's fine. So I stay in the bedroom and I take out my French books and I review what I looked at the day before. So that might take about a half an hour I spend on that. And then after I do all my, you know, kitchen duties to prepare for the lunch and everything, after lunch, I come in and sit down for maybe an hour and a half. The first thing that I do is I listen to the story. I listen to it. And then after I listen to it, I read it aloud. And then if I still have a little, you know, some words that I don't understand, I spend time looking them up. I look up those words. Once in a while, I'll try to memorize them, but I sort of don't bother with the memorizing too much now because it hasn't been that fruitful. So what I do, but I do look them up just so it's sort of like to just get me a little bit more acquainted with them and that I understand what they mean. And then after I do that, I listen to the story on a quicker speed. You know, I put it
yes,
up a
because
bit
we have different speeds on the membership, and you can choose your speed.
Yes, and that's a great thing that you have added to that we can do that. And then what I do is I, you know, take a little break, and then later on I'll come back in the room in my, you know, where I do my work. And I will do some review, or I like to read. And I have what I had done. This is before I got to know about your website. I had bought these books that it's called Les Colommes du Roi Soleil. And they're for girls that are maybe 12 years old, very young girls. And they're all about the Sun King and how these young girls, they were orphaned during some wars that took place at that time. And the king took pity on them because they were children of aristocrats that fought for him. And he opened up like an orphanage where the nuns would help raise them. And then some of them would get married, some of them would become nuns. It was, you know, but they're very, very nice stories. They're sweet stories. Probably more my generation would be interested. I don't know, but I love
I think
French
it's
history.
really interesting. I didn't know it's a
there's a
series,
whole-
so
yes,
written in French.
It's written in French. It's a series, and what I'll say about it, what impressed me very much, and I could hardly believe it, was that the vocabulary in the stories is very accelerated. So that even though they're written for, say, 12-year-olds, 13, 11, 12, 13, every page has a new vocabulary that are very unusual words. And to me, it just showed the extent of the French language, how vast it is, how amazing. And that I've said to myself, I don't know for sure, but in the French schools, they must really try to educate the students, give them a lot of vocabulary, very beautiful words that would be like college age words. That's how it seemed to me, because I had never come across these words through all my years of studying and reading French. So it's a very beautiful series, and you can get the books on Amazon. They come, yes, it comes like in a little box. So there might be 3 or 4 of them in a box. It's a long series. And they're very sweet. They're very charming, very relaxing to read, you know. And you get to learn about the French court and how things worked out, and Versailles. You learn a little history of France and how it was for the young people at that age. Some of them have a boyfriend. Some have, the king picks somebody for them to marry, and they don't want this one. And you know, there's some people didn't want to be there. They would prefer to be in somewhere else, and all the conflicts they have to work out. So I do really recommend it. It is. I
will put the link, the title of this series in the description below the video, because I'm sure it will interest those who are watching us, Diane.
Yes, it's very good. Yeah. And so I'm trying to think if there's something else that I could add to it. You know, I think it does help when you're learning the language to be culturally well-rounded, to know something. Like you introduced the arts when we had that program, and you showed us the masterpieces, and I do hope you continue that, because that was really nice.
We are starting again next Friday. Well, this video will be on YouTube after, but we are starting on Friday, 21st of January again.
Yeah, that's great, because I really appreciated that.
Yes.
And, you know, I loved when I was in Paris, besides studying the ballet, I spent a lot of time in the Rodin Museum, and I would draw the sculptures, you know, and I met some artists over there, and they helped me launch my work as a fine artist, which I do. I love Jacques Cousteau. So my paintings are of the under the surface of the water, the oceans, the lakes and ponds. I worked for a while at the Cold Spring Harbor Fish Hatchery and Aquarium, which is a part of the Cold Spring Harbor Institute on Long Island. And they really are trying to improve the environment, the natural resources. So when I do my paintings, they're for exhibitions. I don't really get involved with galleries or commercial or anything like that. I just show the paintings, and I have a little website that has the paintings on them. And it's just to bring attention, like Cousteau tried to do, to the needs of the sea creatures, the things that's very important to protect the environment. So, you know, I'm, you know, trying to do a little bit here, a little bit there. It keeps life interesting. But for me, the pin, like, so to speak, the cultural pin that all rolls around is the French language, French culture. I just feel that, you know, there's something very accessible about it. It's attainable. It's the whole world in a nutshell, so to speak. You know, I love American culture. I love English literature, their culture, Chinese culture. That influenced me very much with the painting style, using the ink brush. Really helped me very much as an artist, and they all contribute. But somehow or other, I find that France gathers it all together somehow. I don't know, but that's my perspective. Of course, it started at age 3, so.
But I mean, it really moves me, Diane, that you say that. I'm really touched. It's true that I mean, people like the great philosophers, you know, les Lumières, before that, the king's son, le roi Louis XIV, brought French as being universal, we say in France.
Yes,
yeah.
Yes.
So it might be what you are trying to say too.
It might be that, exactly. Yeah. Yes. You know, and I know that you were interested to know if I have a little saying or proverb.
Yes, to end this beautiful conversation, Diane, I want to thank you so much, because I didn't know your story, and this story is really amazing. I mean, I didn't know. It's wow. I can't believe it. Well, I mean, you're showing to people that, yeah, you need to be determined, of course.
Yes.
And you had downs. You were about to quit, and finally through the kitchen door.
Right, exactly. And I'll say that my mother, she would say, put your heart to it and you'll succeed. And beautiful. Most people would say, put your mind to it and you'll succeed. But my mother would say, put your heart to it. And I think that's what you're trying to say also, because the mind is the grammar, it's the study, it's, you know, testing, but the heart is the love of it. And when you have the love, that feeling, it lets information come in very comfortably and stay with you. You know, that's what the heart is for. It's to hold the good stuff. So that's what I remember my mother saying that. And then it seems to me that that's how you go about teaching and helping us to acquire the French. So as a child, I naturally started acquiring, hearing those French words, you know, échappé, plié, pirouette, arabesque. They came to me naturally. 3 years old, nobody was speaking them outside of my ballet class. It's something that I heard and I remembered, and I would show my friends, plie, you know, arabesque. They didn't know what I was saying, but I could say it to them. And then school shut it down. Then it was no more acquiring. It was trying whatever they were doing, learning that I didn't really learn much except, well, yes, I could read, but I couldn't speak. But then when I found you, I could acquire again. And that was the high point, just to acquire. So I thank you. I really owe it to you and your husband, Ben. He is wonderful. The both of you have very nice voices, which makes it so easy to listen to, because sometimes you'll get a tape or something of these people that are trying to teach you the French, and their voice, you can't get it. It's too fast or too strange. You know.
Yes, I know that we are making an effort really to speak clearly and, as we say in French, distinctement, so that you can hear the words, and then you can, with the different speeds, you can put it at a faster speed when then you are used to it and you think it's too slow, of course. But I think at first it's important to really hear the words and to hear it slowly.
Yes, that's
So,
right. You know, it really is amazing how it helps so much.
but thank you so much, Diane, because
Thank you,
really I
Alice.
love how you put it into your own words. You explained it so clearly. I mean, I couldn't have explained it myself that better than you did just now. Put your heart into it. I just love it. I didn't think about it. So thank you to your mother, in fact, because if she hears us.
She's up, she's up there. How could I doubt
thanks to her.
With 8 children.
Because it's true that, you're right. It's really something, your inner child putting you, and when you love something, then you are motivated to keep doing it. You keep doing it each day, because you spend like 2 hours each day.
Yeah, I would say 2 hours a day. I split it up. So, you know, if I get to be tired, I take a break. But it's so enjoyable. And like I said, at dinner time, I will tell the story. You know, I can't really say it in French because, you know, my husband and daughter, they both studied French, but he can speak more, but right now he's forgotten a lot. He'd have to, you know, brush up on it. And the same for my daughter. She didn't get that far with it. But I feel the stories are so meaningful and so worthwhile that I tell them at the dinner table, and they love it. And we learn something together, you know. Very good.
Yeah, that's also another thing that we as humans, we crave stories. We love stories. So that's the best way to acquire language, through stories. I really believe in that, and I'm so happy you get to share the stories too.
Yes, it's wonderful.
This is wonderful. Thank you so much, Diane. Merci du fond du cœur. It's an amazing journey, and I know it will motivate those who, it will really encourage those who are watching us to continue, to keep on. I will put the link, so in the description, to the series you mentioned, because I'm also interested. I didn't know about this series.
And I would be remiss if I didn't mention Tina and Kay Jones. Because they're great motivators also, and they encouraged me very much. And I remember Kay saying, "Don't be nervous, don't be afraid," you know. And Tina, she's get going, you know. Very motivating. So that's part of the community that you established, and there are many others. Fabio, he was great too. He very good motivator. So I'm just delighted.
All those, Kay, Tina, and Fabio, you can watch also, because I interviewed them. You can watch them on the Motivation Break. I will pin the playlist below the video. And also I love this community. Really, I didn't expect people like gathering and sharing and so generous. You are so generous, Diane, Tina, Kay. So thank you so much. That's what is also amazing. It's the great community you managed to build. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. And I will also put, maybe I can also share your website. I want to see your paintings, Diane. I didn't know that. But
I'll tell you, it's Lake Art Studio Paintings.com.
I will put it in the description too, because I didn't know that. And I love that we, as human beings, we each have a talent, and we need to share those talents.
I have a little sample of one here. I'll show you. I don't know if you can see it, with the little animal just under the water. You see, I don't know how it comes across on this screen, but Yeah.
It looks beautiful.
The little
Yeah.
salamanders, little sea creatures, you know, they're in ponds and rivers, supposed to show the how the life is under the water. The aquatic plants, they call them. And it's very sad how so much of the water is being contaminated and polluted. I did a lot of work, environmental work, years ago when I was younger, and now I concentrate on the painting and writing, whatever I can do to try to help the environment. And as I said, it's not commercial, it's not gallery. I need the paintings to send around to show, so that's what I do.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm learning so much today, Diane.
Thank you.
About you. It's really great. So
thank you, Alice.
Thank you so much. Again, if you want to join our community, if you want to join the challenge hour each Saturday with Diane, join us on aliceyel.com on my website. And what can I say to end this beautiful conversation? I just want to say happy French acquisition to all, of you watching us. Share in the comments if you have had the same experience as Diane, if school was hard for you, you had a bad experience maybe at school with French. Share with us what you enjoy reading in French. If you know the series Diane mentioned, share in the comments. We will be happy to see your comments, to read your comments. Merci beaucoup, Diane. Et
Merci,
à bientôt, la communauté.
Thank you, Alice.
Merci.
Merci.